two, what Emma's saying, we're really going to just dig in a little bit about the upsides and downsides of the brain changes and give you some ideas about how to respond. So we'll move on from there. And if we can move to the next slide. Okay.
Awesome. So we are looking at the upside of emotional changes. So, I mean, last time we talked a little bit about the kind of intense reactions that teens can have. The part of their brain that's in charge of the emotions is extremely activated. But, you know, there are some positives. Teens are very vital. It's one of the reasons why I really love my job, is that they're so fun to be around, like that energy and that passion. They really know how to have fun. They're super creative with like ways of having fun. Sometimes it scares parents, but enthusiasm is just, I find it very like infectious.
Yeah.
You know, when you walk by a group of teens, they're joking, they're loud, they're laughing, right? They're very animated. And, you know, compared to a group of folks who are maybe older or seniors, like it's less animated, less crazy. So yeah, their highs are higher, and that shows. So we'll go on though to the downsides.
Yeah. Okay, so with the teen being so very emotional, there are a few things there's some downsides to that emotionality. And I'm hoping you might be able to relate to a few of these things. Basically, the moods are very unpredictable. It can be they're happy one moment and on top of the world, and the next moment they're irritable, and you're kind of like going, what happened in the wind? Something changed. And often parents feel like they're walking on eggshells with their teens, and especially when they'll get sullen one-word answers and prickly responses. So yeah, their moods can change like the wind sometimes. So that can be a little bit confusing for parents, for sure. The other downside about being so emotional is sorrows are felt very deeply. A rejection from a friend can just absolutely be devastating. And so the challenge is to acknowledge some of their hurts, and why they're feel those emotions so intently. I think they also don't have that life experience to be able to manage these feelings or put it into perspective. But sorrows are very deeply felt.
Yeah.
The other thing is teens are notorious for misinterpreting other people's emotions. So many parents will say a statement, and then they're going to be completely bewildered by the teen is either reacting and they're like, I didn't mean anything by that. Why are you getting so upset? But what we think is happening is the teen is super sensitive to certain things. And so one thing they're really sensitive about is if they get the sense that the parent in any way is hinting that they're not capable or competent.
Oh yeah.
Because it sort of rubs at their idea of being independent. Yeah. And so if a parent innocently and helpfully tells their teen, oh, don't forget your coat. Unfortunately, a teen will hear that as, what, you don't think I'm capable? You think I'm stupid? And then sometimes that can erupt into a conflict. And meanwhile, the parent's just kind of like, I was just telling you to put on your coat. So we hear that quite a bit, don't we, Emma?
Oh my God, we hear that.
Yeah.
It's like probably one of the more common ones, just like teens like, stop yelling, but you know, you're not yelling, right? Like it's this like very reactive to perceived threats, basically.
Yeah, very, very reactive. And it's very baffling to parents because they're good intentioned.
Yeah.
So another example of how teens don't accurately read facial expressions, there was a report done, a research study where a teen was put into a brain scan and a neutral face was pasted onto this brain scan. And then they were asked to say, what do they see? And the teen actually saw an angry face as opposed to if you and I as adults saw it, we go, well, that's a neutral face. The teen saw anger. And that was a real awakening to me because it may help me understand, because my daughter would always say to me when she was a teen, like, don't get mad at me, stop yelling at me. And now I think she was actually seeing an angry face, which is kind of bizarre when you think about that, eh? When you're showing your concerned face, they're seeing anger.
Yeah.
So that was kind of some good insight. So
totally. And it makes sense because right, like they're moving out into the world. And so, our brains have really designed it. So we're going to really sense danger, right? Like teens are very aware of when there's danger, and it's like almost hyper aware. And so they're going to interpret it where it's not actually there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. You're right, Emma. Like teens are absolutely wired to detect any kind of threat.
It's any parent, does that resonate with anybody or anybody? Like, you guys can give a thumbs up on your Zoom, like just to let it, oh yeah, okay, I can see a couple there.
A couple?
Yeah, more, yeah, right. Like it's something we hear a lot, definitely in our role. So
yeah. And the other thing that is interesting about teens is we often expect teens to be able to tell us in very rational ways how they're feeling. And also knowing as adults, when we're emotionally upset, we don't have the capacity to rationally say how we're feeling. And yet we do expect teens to be able to say, oh yeah, mom, for example, let's say if you were to take away their phone, which always it's a major event when that happens. I want to reassure every parent out there. Teens get very upset about it, and it does feel like life and death to them. But the thinking would be is if the teen was really be able to express their feelings in a rational way, it would sound more like, Mom, when you take my phone away, I feel really sad and upset, and I have a need to stay connected to my friends because I feel afraid and lonely when I don't have that connection. We know that never happens.
Did that ever happen? I don't
never.
Even think so.
Does that ever happen? No. What it sounds like, it sounds more like a temper tantrum, and you're like, oh my goodness, this kid's 2 years old, and usually telling you how much they hate you, and you're the worst parent in the world. Mm-hmm. But that again, that's the restructuring of the brain, and you're going to see that volatility and reactivity, especially when you take what's perceived as their lifeline. That does feel like a threat.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that often teens, they are really confused by their own emotions as well. I've had really good conversations with teens, and they really are kind of bewildered by some of their feelings of, you know what, I don't know why I'm critical of my mom. I don't know why I'm so moody.
Yeah.
And I think they honestly don't know why they are so moody. So no. It can be helpful to help explain to teens what's going on in your brain.
Totally, because it's bewildering to feel kind of controlled by these big like upswings, downswings.
Yeah. Yeah. And the negative sides too is that often teens will use negative coping mechanisms
to deal with emotions. You mean like?
Yeah. They'll deal with stress by smoking pot or zoning out on the phone.
Yeah.
Because these emotions are pretty powerful.
Oh yeah.
And the other thing that I feel compelled to tell parents, just so they're not surprised by this, is it's also not uncommon for teens to vent at their parents. And the thinking behind that is teens are very new at managing life. They are managing social relationships, teen relationships, conflicts, maybe like school, maybe work. And they have a certain capacity about how much they can cope with. And unfortunately, it's kind of like a boiling pot. Every once in a while, they just kind of snap and it lands on the parent. So I just kind of wanted to let parents know that that's also not uncommon,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
And then of course the decision is how do you handle it when your teen does vent at you? I mean, often parents feel compelled to set them straight.
Yeah.
It's not usually a good time because you got a teen that's so escalated and the parents escalated. And so everybody's got to calm down a little bit before you can have those conversations. So
Well, next,
yeah. Mhm.
oh, sorry, Denise. I was going to say the next slide, we're kind of
Yeah.
getting into that a bit.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah, this slide is I don't know, I've some people might know it as anger mountain. There's different names. It's a kind of a classic diagram, but we just call it like the physiology of an emotional outburst because it's not always anger. Sometimes it can be just, it's a mix. It's like anger, sadness, hurt, anxiety, whatever. It's all bubbling out. So basically we're looking at like at the first point is the triggering event. So say your teen tells you that they are going to do the dishes and they don't. So you're starting, that's the thing that starts you kind of getting a little upset.
And that never happens, does it?
I mean,
That
no,
happens,
barely.
That happens all the time. That's what we hear about. That chores makes parents so frustrated.
Chores are the thing.
That's the hot spot.
It's a hot spot. Yeah. So basically we'll say this example, dishes aren't done, chores not done. So then starts to feel annoyance. You start to kind of climb up that peak towards number 2, right? Your body maybe starts getting maybe tense. If you're to really tune into it, sometimes you find your jaw clenches or you make fists. Your thoughts are spinning like, oh my God, my teen is so lazy. All they do is sit in their room. Like, I'm actually going to work. Like, you have all these thoughts, right?
Which, of course, those kinds of thoughts are fueling your anger.
For sure.
If you had different replacement thoughts, like, that's okay, I can handle it.
Totally.
But our thoughts absolutely impact how we feel.
Oh my God, it's like a real feedback loop, right? So if you're, you're starting to kind of have these thoughts, it gets patterned. And then the more you climb up that mountain, the part of your brain that we talked about on Tuesday called the prefrontal cortex, that's right up here. And that part it's more logical. Basically, the more emotional you get, the less accessible your prefrontal cortex is. So you're moving into your reptile parts of your brain, that kind of more fight or flight. So the number 3 crisis is usually when you freak out as well. You might explode, you yell, you punish, like sometimes you say things you don't mean, or you do mean, but you just wouldn't have said it. So that's the crisis event. That's the peak of the mountain where your logical brain is kind of hard to access, but your emotions are very active. But our brains cannot sustain that level. Our bodies and brains cannot sustain that level of intensity. So inevitably there's going to be a kind of decline. So as you cool down towards number 4, your prefrontal cortex is starting to come back online, more access to it. You might kind of start feeling a bit regretful or thinking, oh, okay, maybe I could have dealt with that differently. You might feel sometimes a bit down. And then again, sometimes people can go right down to number 5 where you feel a bit like depressed or spent or tired from a freak out. So I'm thinking everybody can probably relate to this. I know I can. So this is just kind of breaks it down into pieces. And so if you can think about how it feels as an adult to go through this, imagine your teenager, because your teenager has even less ability to access their prefrontal cortex than you do as an adult. And they have more intense emotional swings. So like Denise said, like we kind of expect our teens to be able to calmly talk about how they're feeling with us. And it's a big ask. It's kind of like when we, when a 2-year-old is saying mine and they're not wanting to share, usually we know, okay, that's developmentally appropriate. We might try to, encourage them to share or talk about it with them, but we kind of have this acceptance. And so I think for for teenagers, it's really important to think about like, what are they actually capable of doing, and to kind of adjust your expectation that they're probably not going to be able to very calmly and logically tell you what's going on. So if you want to, Anne, if you want to click on that, and we're going to try to show the green line. Oh yes, thank you. So person A is the one having the freak out. If you look at person B, that is kind of where you're aiming to be as a parent when your teen is having an outburst.
And that is not an easy task.
Oh my God, it is not
No.
easy. And I mean, really, this is true for any people, anybody
Yeah.
who's around you who's having a freak out. You can think about being B.
Yeah.
That's the place to be, because the more you escalate with somebody, it's going to make it even higher. Your crisis peak will be way up. If you can try to keep your emotions not, totally numb, that's probably not going to go over very well. But if you can keep a kind of a grounded place through, lots of grounding techniques, talk about breathing, talk about, managing your thoughts, all these kinds of things, to kind of be that level place. Your teen, likely their peak won't probably get as high. They still will probably get upset, but I'm thinking, the thinking is it's going to lessen the reactivity of the teen or whoever you're with, their kind of emotional reaction. It's really easy to get pulled into that and go up the mountain with them, especially if that's a pattern that's been established, and that's pretty normal.
Mhm.
So just to kind of keep in mind that green line, and if you can do it like 20-30% of the time, that's amazing. Like,
Absolutely.
nobody's expecting anything more.
No.
I certainly, and I do this for like a living, I certainly cannot do that a lot of the time, right? It's just, if you can try to aim for it, you're going to maybe get halfway, and that's great.
Absolutely.
You have anything else to add to that, Denise?
No, I think you've done a nice job explaining it. I think it's just helpful to see that this is a physiological response. This is what we all go through when we are agitated.
Totally.
And to see what actually happens. And when we are right at number 3, none of us have any ability to manage ourselves at that point. So we kind of want to, if we could bring things down at that trigger point, we have more capacity to manage that upset. But we've all been there at that crisis level where we have no access to our thinking brain, and it's all emotions.
Totally. And so when you're trying to reason with your teen or give consequences when they're up at number 3, they can't actually really hear you or process it. So you can try to do it between like 1 and 2, or when they're down like 4, 5 and beyond, those are the windows that you can actually logically like reason. When you're at 3, you just got to ride it out. Unfortunately.
No.
Okay, well, we can move on. I think we've got a video coming up.
We do.
Sweet. Okay, so we think we worked out the sound pretty well, so hopefully this goes ahead. This video is just talking about how to help teens manage their emotions, so kind of similar to what we were talking about.
For the next few minutes, we'll help you decode the brain and behavior of your favorite teenager, aka the hot mess. In adults, a part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex, the PFC, acts as a dictator over the rest of the brain. The most esteemed and enlightened PFC keeps a lockdown on all our emotions and encourages reason and moderation. And the extremist part of the brain, the hormone-driven limbic system, is ruled with an iron fist. However, the all-powerful PFC's rise to power is slow compared to its opposition, the hormonal limbic system. In short, the part of the brain responsible for your teen's emotions and outbursts is fully mature, but its counterpart, which filters what we say and do, isn't mature until their early 20s. Your teen is literally bursting with intense feelings. Dopamine, the happy hormone, will never be present at such high levels as it is in the teen years. Not on your wedding day, not when you get that corner office, not ever. So, when your teen says, "You just don't understand," she's actually right. On top of this, because her brain is still maturing, your teen's biological stress response is the complete opposite of yours. Hormones that make adults and kids calm down in the face of challenges have the opposite effect in teens, who become moodier or more volatile. But that doesn't mean you should just let these emotional time bombs walk around ticking. It's your job to turn them into fully functioning adults. Think of yourself as the interim dictator and follow these steps to maintain order. The limbic system reacts to praise with happy hormones. So, be liberal with your praise of the good, mature, restrained behavior that you want to see more of. The more your teen feels praise for good behavior, the more likely they are to continue to do it for the happy dopamine high. Choice, even just the illusion of it, increases compliance. Teens are striving towards independence, so giving them choices helps them to feel autonomous, while still allowing you to guide them. Make sure you only give choices you can accept. Don't offer false choices, or your teen may call your bluff. Studies show that teens are more likely to misinterpret facial expressions, frequently mistaking fear and shock for anger. Practicing a poker face gives your teen fewer opportunities to mistake your expressions for a provocation. Studies have shown that teens are able to reason like adults, but not in emotionally charged situations. So, the biggest trick to strengthening the PFC is to remove the stress from the experience. This way, your teen has space to reflect and respond rather than react immediately. One way to do this is to pause in the midst of a heated argument and come back to the topic when things have cooled down. Modeling is one of the single biggest influencers of kids' behavior as they get older. If you want a PFC to grow faster, you have to set a good example. Show him there is a way to be angry and still act respectfully. When you and your teen have cooled off, ask them the questions you want them to ask themselves as an alternative response. Watch out for phrases that usually pop up in arguments, such as, "I told you so," or "because I said so." You don't know what you're talking about. These actually weaken the PFC, inflame the limbic system, and build resentment. Having boots on the ground helps to buffer her from the volatile limbic system. Remember that when your teen is being annoying and pushing you away, she actually needs you most. Research shows that even the mere physical presence of a parent benefits teens.
True.
Yeah, we know you've heard this before. But seriously, your teen, preoccupied with his emotions and independence, will communicate much less than ever before. It's up to you to keep talking and listening. Until the day that the enlightened PFC rules jointly with the limbic system.
Excellent, thank you. I definitely remember knocking on my daughter's door trying to have some communication with her. So just really quickly, how do you respond on that emotional roller coaster? It can often feel like you are on an emotional roller coaster with your teen, with the moods. So the challenge is not to ride the roller coaster. Try and take a step back and not be fully engaged with their emotions. I know this is not easy, but try not to take their words personally. It really is about the restructuring of the brain. And even though this is hard, when your team is upset, sometimes if you're able to empathize with the emotion, that can bring down the temperature of the conflict a little bit. So if you're able to say, I see that you're upset and hurt and you're wanting to go to that party, you'll probably get a snarky response from that. But in fact, it probably brings down that emotional escalation a little bit. And there's real power in empathy, and the teen gets, or the teen understands that you get how they're feeling. And so that can bring down the level. And there's also value just in emotional literacy. So your teen starts to understand their own body sensations and can give language to their feelings. It is hard though. The biggest part with having an emotional teen is managing your own emotional reaction. So the challenge really is breathing, trying to ground yourself, trying to notice what you're saying to yourself, if it's fueling more anger or if it's lessening your anger. really your role when the teen is so emotionally upset is just to be the anchor for the teen. It's almost as if there was a car accident and the paramedic came and was frantic and freaking out, that really wouldn't be very comforting. And so the goal is for you to be sort of that calm anchor when they are in that emotional freak out. They need someone to be stable rather than engaging. I think we pretty much covered that. I mean, the only other thing is about facial expressions. Yeah, just being aware of your facial expressions, because you can see how it's easily misinterpreted.
No, that's true. So this statement can sometimes be hard because it's hard to think about our role as parents sometimes in it, but a parent's response can determine the intensity and duration of their teen's rebellion. You know, a lot of parents feel like, you know, you're at the mercy of your teen's emotions and of their just of that roller coaster, right? And so it's just really looking at, okay, well, what can I control? And a lot of that is just really, it's your response. That's all you can do. So we're to move on. Thanks, Anna. So we've kind of just came up with a little spectrum here. So in LIFT, we look at a lot of parenting styles. And so this is a common kind of spectrum. And so at one end, we've got the kind of permissive parenting. And mind you, these are things that usually when we're stressed, we resort to either one of these ends of the spectrum. So, you know, obviously when we're calm, we can maybe be a little bit more balanced, but usually we're kind of going to be at either end when we're activated or stressed. So the permissive parent is usually no limits. You kind of cave more, no expectations. You might beg or plead. You would moralize with your kid, lecture your kid. You give in, but then sometimes when you give in for so long, you end up just freaking out after a while of giving in. So it can be kind of that flip-flop, which can be confusing for other people around that, right? So with permissive parents, I often see resentment building because resentment's often a sign that your boundaries are too low. So that's kind of one end of that parenting style. And then at the other end, we've got the authoritarian. And that one is a lot more kind of, I don't know, obvious to see. It's very more in your face, more aggressive, anger, rigid. This idea that, you know, you will comply with me. Like I'm going to punish you enough so you do what I say. People call it more like old school parenting, critical, do as I say, not as I do. So, you know, depending on what kind of family you grew up with, usually kind of fit more into one of those ends. Again, ideally, we can look at being that middle authoritative, which is reasonable limits, you know, still having limits. You're following through on what you say. You're firm, but kind in your responses, no, not mean. You listen, you offer choice, and the consequences can be logical or even natural consequences of letting things play out. Like, oh, my teen's going to be late for work. I have to remind them and get on them. And it's like, okay, well, my teen's late for work. Maybe they lose their job and they're going to have to find a new one. And that sucks for them. And it might suck for me. But, you know, how do you encourage your teen to learn? So
and foster responsibility.
Yes, totally, Denise. Like what, you know, how you respond can either foster dependence or independence in your kid. So kind of asking yourself that before you respond. So just curious, you guys can just reflect to yourselves, but, you know, do you see yourself on any kind of either end of the spectrum, somewhere in the middle? And think about when you're stressed, kind of where do you think you lie? Because we all
some of these concepts might be completely foreign to people. They may never have actually heard about this before. And
yes,
and you can certainly do more research on these different parenting styles, and they really do longitudinal studies, and they basically record how how well do teens and kids develop? And the research suggests kids develop well, foster independence if there's that authoritative approach, because we all want our kids to do well. But part of the challenge is like you said, Emma, is sometimes we've been raised in other areas and we've never had the opportunity to learn new skills.
Yeah.
And because we've never experienced it. So yeah, so that's just something to consider.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we can move on. I think that's kind of covering it enough, but just that part is kind of aiming for the middle.
Aiming for the middle.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we know how important the social world is for the teen. It's critically important. It's
The ultimate.
it's so intense and it's probably frustrating for parents. But there's some positives to the teen being so intensely focused on their social world. And what we do know is friendships, they absolutely support mental health. If teens that have a social network and a group of friends they can turn to, it supports mental health. The other benefit of that intense social focus is they're learning relationship skills. Teens are not, it's not uncommon for teens to set other teens straight around how they behave. And as opposed to the parent having to teach them on the social roles. The other thing is knowing that sense of belonging is one of the biggest needs of adolescents right now. That is their driving force.
Yeah.
So that's the upside. There's some, even though maybe you might not be fond of their friends, again, remembering they're just trying to sort out who's good for them, who's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the downsides of that kind of intense social focus is there can be an increased self-consciousness. This idea of like teens having an invisible audience following them around everywhere. So they're this feeling that they're always being watched, and what do I look like? How do I appear? What do others think about me? Right? Like they're really craving acceptance, right? And that does meet that need of belonging, because again, like humans, we needed to belong in order to survive, right? For eons. So that drive is still very much in us. Peer pressure can be a thing, maybe they go against their own morals to be accepted. And, teens can be like bullying or there can be substance use, but sometimes it's that craving of just acceptance. They're more isolated from adults. This isn't this isn't always a bad thing, right? They're learning to make their own worlds, but it can be if maybe your teen's getting a lot more advice from their friends and about how to handle this, or your mom can't talk to you like that and all that, right? So there's this kind of teen group thing.
If you could also relate to the idea when you get that helpful advice where the teen says, you don't have to do dishes, you can go and live in foster care.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. Just say this and then you get removed. Yeah.
And they seem to have a social network where they've communicated. And so that's also really common, what we experience here as well.
It really is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And the social exclusion can be a huge thing for them. Like they can feel like life or death situation. Oh my God, they spiral. And part of that is, again, they don't have like as much perspective on things, but exclusion is scary. And just
it cuts right to the core with teens. It really does. A certain look will send them into a real spiral.
Totally. And the drama too is related to all of that. Like I hear a lot about drama and social issues from parents, and that's a worry, like just kids trying to fix each other's problems and trying to help. There's a hot and coldness, one day you're in, the next day you're having a fight. Yeah. So it's another roller coaster of its own kind of thing. So yeah, it's not an easy thing. So we can move on to the next one, the reflection exercise. Thanks, Anna. So just take a,
Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just gonna say, just for them, for folks to just take maybe 10 seconds. And if they want to write something down to Anna, if they feel inspired, that would be awesome. Yeah,
We'd love to get some feedback because this is a very isolating experience.
we don't feel like we belong right now.
Yeah,
We can't see your faces, you know, we want
yeah.
to.
We're talking to a black screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
So do you remember an experience in high school when you felt rejected or you felt excluded? And how did it feel? Just take a moment and think about it. Did you share about it with your parents? And why or why not? And what did your parents do that made it better or made it worse? It is connecting with that past teen self. It can help us have empathy for our own teens.
Absolutely.
Okay. So again, people can talk about it with somebody else is there, or just keep that in mind next time social stuff is happening with your team. And it's just taking a sec.
Okay.
I'm sure she will move on to the next slide very soon. She's hard at work.
She's taking in information.
Yes, I think she's dealing with a lot of people talking and everything. So great multitasker. Thanks, Anna.
Okay. So part of the challenge is, how do you respond to all their social changes and going more out into the world? Their world is suddenly expanded incredibly, where when they were children, they were just deeply connected with their nuclear family, but now they're connecting with friends that you don't even know anymore. You know, when they were in elementary school, you knew all the friends, and now they're talking about friends that you've never heard of. So part of the challenge is actually just recognizing your own feelings of loss just as a parent, because I absolutely remember feeling devastated when my daughter didn't want to spend any time with me at all. And Lisa Dumore of the book Untangled, I really recommend that book. She says, as parents, it hurts so much when someone you love so much no longer wants anything to do with you. So it almost feels like they've broken up with you. And it can be really hard to accept that part, that they are expanding. And I had to give myself some good talks around, it's okay that they want to go and see other people. I'm still an important person to them. And so, but recognize that is hard. That's very hard. And then also the challenge is, I think parents truly underestimate their power to comfort and support their teens. They often want to go to outside supports, and I would say learning how to empathize and just be there with your teen when they're experiencing pain, and you're someone who the teen loves and cares about, so it's going to be so meaningful. So just being there for them if they are hurt and struggling with social rejection, you can be a huge source of support. Ask reflective questions is and it can be pretty subtle, like, oh, well, how did that feel when she did that? Or you basically want them to sort of reflect and do an examination of their friendships, and check in with their own internal compass. You want to avoid criticizing their friends. I learned this from experience. Don't do this. Is it when you criticize the teen's friends, it's like you're criticizing them. They take it so personally, and it really just drives them more to that friend. And then often what happens is if you forbid them to see a friend, they'll typically go underground and be sneaky about it.
Mhm.
So
That's true.
I think next reflective exercise.
So yeah, let's take the same thing. When you were a teen, how important were your friends to you? Did your parents ever forbid you from seeing a friend or maybe a boyfriend or girlfriend? How did you respond to their rules? And the last question, what would be the best thing that your parent could have done in that situation?
Thank you for participating in these exercises. It's so easy. We really forget about what our teenage years were like. So I appreciate you being willing to participate in this.
Totally. Oh, we've got Anna just sent me a message saying that some folks were just saying to her that just feedback is good, reminding them about their own experiences, like good context, and it's a good way to kind of try to see things differently. So that's great. Thanks. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I think we can move on.
We can. Okay, the risk taking. This is a big one. So as teens, like we've talked about on Tuesday, their reward centers are, very sensitive during the teen years. And so risks are going to be a part of that. The upside is fun. Risk taking gives you that real rush, right? So they're definitely having fun. Their increased drive to try new things is kind of cool, right? Like they really open to experience and open to newness and change. I think that's something that as adults, we can still definitely be like that, but I think we have a lot more need or interest in being like more stable, more grounded. And with teens, they don't have that. They're a lot more fascinated by possibilities and change, and that can be fun to be around, right? So yeah, it's not all downsides with the risks.
Okay, so the downsides of risks. Me as a parent, I was a worrier, and so I would always see where's the danger. But there are downsides. So some of the downsides are there is the myth of immunity, and it really is where the teen believes that they're invincible, and nothing bad can happen to them. And of course, that really does leave them vulnerable to making bad impulsive decisions and putting themselves in danger. So that would be the downside of risk taking. They don't always have that stop button when they need it. There's this teenage angst where there's just this boredom and restlessness, and we know it's all connected to the brain, where they're just thrive. They want so much excitement, and there's just such a strong drive. And then again, it can put them in situations where there is more increased harm for them. So that could be that's the downside of risk taking.
Yeah.
So the next one. Okay, so if you've ever wondered, how do teens make decisions? And this was a concept that it was actually, Daniel Siegel, he talked about how is it that teens make decision? And he came up with the phrase of, it's called hyper-rational thinking. And so basically it's kind of a decisional balance that teens do. So they play up the excitement of something, of the thrill, but they downplay the consequences. So the thrill is, oh, right up there. And the consequences is that won't happen. So just as an example of that, just from some experience, I recall a teen that decided to set up some fireworks in the school atrium, and so basically, his decisional balance was he was looking at the exciting, thrilling part of that. He was imagining, oh, this is going to be so fun because my friends are going to laugh. They're going to see the teacher really upset, and that's always fun. And the fire alarms are going to go off. There might be a lockdown. This is like so much fun. And so that went right up there. That was the most important thing. And he really downplayed the idea of, oh yeah, and then there's the problem of the police involvement and then having to talk to the principal. And but it really didn't, in that teen's mind, the drive, the excitement was what mattered more was the thrill and the excitement rather than, I mean, he rationally knew, yeah, it wouldn't be good. But in that hyper rational thinking, it seemed like a really good idea.
Totally.
So that is really a common phenomenon with teens around how they actually make decisions. And especially when there's connections around socially with peers,
Yeah.
then it kind of revs them up. So
Oh, totally.
yeah, so that's kind of how they're thinking.
Totally.
Yeah. And so we'll move to, oh no, we're good. Yep.
So another reflection, because we are counselors after all.
Yes.
So can you recall a time, and I know this might be hard, when you made a bad decision as a teenager?
Oh, we'd really like to hear some sharing.
Oh my God, if
That
you guys
would
have any
really- that would be kind of fun.
Oh my God, if you have any really good ones, please write it to Anna, because I just want to know.
Me too.
Yeah. Really get in touch with that decision. Anna just says too many.
Too many. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Drunk driving. Yeah, that one I think is not uncommon. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dangerous driving. Pipe bomb in the school bathroom.
Oh, wow.
Shoplifting.
Thanks for sharing, everybody.
Oh, yeah. No, those are pretty common. And I'm sure just the day-to-day things about, hitchhiking, drinking, yeah. Or saying you're going to be somewhere, but you're actually somewhere else. Like that's a classic.
That's classic.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys can remember, that's great. I'm glad you can admit to some of these things. Cause yeah, we're definitely not angels. So did you make this decision even though there were negative consequences?
I just had to share this one, guys.
Oh, this is Anna.
Yeah, this is Anna's voice coming from the beyond. Fantastic examples.
Yeah.
Hairspray and fires. Really good. Exploding pen in my teacher's desk. As a result, the teacher threw scissors and had a breakdown. Stealing a car.
Damn.
Those are great.
Thanks for sharing, folks.
And then some folks are saying, but I was actually the good kid. That is also legit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, super legit.
Oh, traveling by bus to a city I didn't know with a stranger. Oh, and some
Oh,
significant consequences. Oh, some hard life lessons there.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of those ones that you guys gave, like they're, to the logical mind, there would be some pretty negative consequences, but a lot of us still make those choices, right?
And sometimes there really isn't that much thought involved with the teenage brain. They're
Oh,
not
no.
just going, let me think about this. Sometimes it really sometimes can be that impulsive. That sounds fun. Let's do that.
That sounds fun is enough.
Yeah.
All right. And then the next kind of question then would be like, what informed your decision making? And we're thinking, would it have been peers, fun, credit, social cred? And then what influenced you to make this? Oh, sorry, I guess that's kind of the same question. I just realized that.
Mhm.
What influenced you to make this decision? Okay, really, we're just trying to get you guys to reflect. So that's really what this is about.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. We can move on. Oh, and I think we have a video next. Yeah. Oh, some people, Anna was just saying they wanted to express creativity. I like that. That's a nice way to look at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa Damore. I'm the author of Untangled, Guiding Teenage Girls Through the 7 Transitions into Adulthood. A particularly interesting dynamic between parent and teenager is when a teenager comes home and talks about the risky things they hear peers are doing. So if your daughter comes home and says, hey, I heard this boy in my class was selling Adderall to the 9th graders, or hey, I heard this girl in my class was texting while she was driving, it can put a parent in a tricky position about how they're supposed to respond. My advice in these moments is to focus on the risks, not the rules. Sometimes as adults we can be pulled to respond to say, what are you talking about? That's illegal, or what if she gets caught by the police, or anything along those lines. But when we focus on the rules, I think we actually point teenagers' attention in the wrong direction. We don't want them worried about what would happen if they get caught. That's usually the least of their problems. We want them to think about the actual risks of what's happening. So if your daughter brings home news of dangerous peer behavior, take those opportunities to say, wow, that's really scary. Those are illegal drugs. Those are super dangerous. Or, wow, texting while driving, that makes me nervous. And I bet it makes you nervous too. We'd hate for her to hurt herself or hurt somebody else while that's happening. So teenagers can get caught up in the questions of what would happen if I'm caught breaking the rules. But as adults, we don't want to respond in that way. Our safest teenagers are the ones who are actually focusing on the risks, not the rules.
So considering that question, how do I respond to their risk taking? So kind of like Lisa says, say that your teen's coming in and they're telling you about something risky or stupid that they have just done, or maybe they're thinking about doing. So your immediate instincts, I know mine would be to be like, I don't think, right? Like you kind of give advice, so try to clamp it down. But we're suggesting actually like give them a bit of space, like let them tell you their ideas or tell you their story, and try not to react. Because, to them, this might not be a dumb thing. To them, this might be something really interesting or really cool. And so the more you can be kind of not detached, but you want to be grounded, you want to be calm, they're going to feel more comfortable sharing with you. So, and to empathize during this time, because, empathizing doesn't actually mean that you agree with them. If you're just empathizing with the emotion, oh, that sounds like that could be fun, or sounds like that was fun. even if the context might be very scary for you as a parent, you can at least empathize with the fun part or whatever. And so if your teen is telling them about something they're maybe thinking about doing, you can help them connect the dots. Like listen to their idea and think, okay, well, if this happened, then how do you think this would turn out? Help them think it through. And again, think about the decisions you made as a teen, right? Like this is very normal. Encouraging intuition. So that's kind of helping your teen access their own gut wisdom rather than you telling them not to do something. It's kind of like helping them think it through, but like, what would it feel like if this happened? Or say this is a consequence of that. What would that be like for you? Like you kind of, you help them go through it. And because teens don't really have a great ability to kind of have foresight. So you might need to help encourage that thinking through thing and listening to like how that would feel for them and thinking how it would feel if that happened. Like Lisa says in the video, focusing on the risk more than the rules when you are at that point talking to them. And yeah, just in general, like you're trying to problem solve. You kind of, you want both your needs to be met. So your teen wants to go sleep over to someone you've never met, their house in another town, and you're feeling kind of like, right? Like maybe, your teen really wants to go and you really need them to be safe. So can you guys work it out so both your needs are met? And kind of let them know you do want them to have fun and you're feeling concerned. So I think it's just making sure that you seem like you're at least an ally to them, and that you can empathize. So those are some ways we found just in our job that can go over probably the best. It's not going to stop the risks from happening, that's for sure, but it can help.
No, and what helped me get through the teenagers is some of you may have taken triple P parenting, and in there is a high risk situation plan. And it maybe we can attach it to the video at some point here, just to.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, basically what it looks like is you're having a discussion with your teen about the risks, the rewards, what your concerns are, what the plan is, what the rules are.
Yeah.
And sort of the follow through. And so it's just a little more of a deliberate plan as opposed to them just going out. And I know I personally felt more comfortable after my daughter we'd go through the plan, and she'd frequently say, no, that's stupid. I'm not going to do that. And then I'd say, okay, well, the answer is no, then you're not going out anywhere. And then she would suddenly become much more cooperative and be willing to go through the exercise with me. So
because you were firm about it, hey? Like you wanted there to be boundaries. Yeah.
I needed to, there were some safety issues that I needed to address, and she needed to hang in there long enough and have a conversation with me. So
yeah,
that kind of helped me get through those teenagers. So
yeah, no, that's good.
Yep.
Yeah. So the last section we're going to talk about is them entering the adult world. So the upside of this kind of transition, and that they're kind of in that kind of adult zone more, is that they're starting to learn how to think outside the box. They're getting creative. A lot of like innovators and great thinkers and movers and shakers were teenagers, or at least young adults who are very similar. We're talking brain wise. People are really passionate about, challenging the status quo and changing things for the better, fighting for injustice. Like that is also very inspiring, right? I think that adults, we could get a little bit more complacent. Oh, that's just the way things are. And teens are like, that shouldn't be, right? So that I think is a really positive thing. It gets things shaken up. And they're transitioning more into that abstract thinking. So their vocabulary is wider. They're starting to understand gray area. They can kind of have more conceptual thoughts, conversations, and that's super cool. So that's kind of the upside of this section.
Okay, so the downside of the teen expanding more out into the world is they're really critical of their parents, and really young children typically will admire their parents and you're like the best. But when they become teens, their feelings about you change. And all of a sudden, you used to be funny and now you're just kind of embarrassing. And so that can be hard on parents because it's like, well, what happened? I used to be funny. And now you're glaring at me when I'm, in the car with your friends to make myself be quiet. So again, this can be another painful time for parents recognizing they no longer have that status of being that cool parent. The downside is they really have the idea that classic, it's a rebel without a cause. There is such a compulsion and a drive to fight the good fight and resist authority and challenge rules and society. And so that's kind of the negative part is you're always, as a parent, you're always rubbing up against I'm going to fight this, when there's maybe not even a fight to fight. The other thing is they often have unrealistic expectations of the world. And so they may have ambitions that are really not grounded in any kind of real life logic. And so that can also be challenging for teens to know I'm not immediately going to work for Google or something. There's some steps that need to be taken. Yeah. And that can be kind of upsetting to a teen when they thought it was going to be that easy. And then with access to what is the the existential thinking where they think really big. They sometimes can get into real thoughts of sadness and despair, like what's the point of life, and it can really lead to a lot of confusion. So that can be sort of the downside of when they get that bigger view picture, because when they're little, they're pretty content just to be hanging out with mom and dad, and then when they enter the world, it's like, whoa, there's so much to take in, and they sometimes can feel troubled by that.
Totally.
Yeah.
So how to respond? Remember that their value systems will likely change many times during adolescence. Often kids kind of end up going back kind of similar values to their parents, not always, but I'd say seems fairly like a generalization though that they can. So with their new ideas, try to be curious rather than critical. They might just take an opposing viewpoint on things just because that's, they're trying to be independent. They're trying to push away from you. And that is much more about their definition of their self, them trying to find themselves, than anything about you. They're just that kind of devil's advocate thing, right? So try not to get engaged in that. Be curious about it, but it doesn't have to be a big debate unless you really are interested in that, and then go for it. Another thing too is supporting their passions, showing up to their performances, going to their games, giving, maybe financially helping them out to join a club or a group or something like that if you can, right? Just kind of really showing your support by being there. And then when life experiences are hard, just to be there, to be that kind of safe, secure base for them. They can go off and try some things, and they might need to come back. They might feel, scared, sad. Oh, that was hard. They come back. And if you can kind of be there, being curious, being compassionate, not, oh, I told you so, that was a dumb decision, that was really hard for you to do, right? That shame. It's more about just letting them come back to you and knowing they'll venture out again.
Yeah, a safe place to land.
Safe place to
They
land.
can explore a little bit and then come back to a safe place. You can never underestimate how important that parental role is to be that safe place.
It's huge.
Yep.
It's a huge risk. What do you call that? My brain's dead by the end of the night. Mitigates risk basically in teens' lives if they have a solid relationship. So yeah. Okay. So that is it.
So we're going to do in summary. there's always more to learn. We've just given you a little bit of a snapshot. But basically, a lot of challenges parents face with their teen is when there's emotional reactivity.
Yeah.
That's when everything goes sideways. That's why we've spent so much time talking about how to manage emotional reactivity. I remember talking to one teen and I asked if what would it take for things to get better? And he says, you know what? 95% of the problem is that we all lose it. And if we could just calm down, we'd solve 95% of the problem. And I thought that was pretty wise.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes. Kind of stay cool, take time out. Yeah, that's huge. Being kind, like with your team, obviously we're encouraging that, but be kind with yourself. Like this is
this is hard work.
It's freaking really hard work.
Yeah.
You know? Like I think we have empathy for parents of like toddlers and babies, like, oh, these are, you know, but your team's not as cute and it's just as hard work. So I think to give yourselves like some compassion and acknowledgement that of the work you do for them.
And society is complicated and you're also up against that.
Yeah.
And just so many pressures.
Yeah.
You know, and so just a reminder to the parents that LIFT is a resource to you. If you like some of the information we're talking about and you just basically want to talk through some of these dilemmas, you can always just give us a call because this is hard work. There's no way around it. And sometimes parents, they say they like to access LIFT because it stops sort of the spinning of questions and wondering what else to do. And then we're sort of a source of comfort or support to help you think through how you want to handle things.
Totally.
Yeah, talking about thinking it through together.
Mm-hmm.
Ask reflective questions. Be curious. This is kind of a cool time for your teen. Just being curious about how they see things and what matters to them. And you're also supporting your teen to learn more about themselves if they've got an attentive listener, being really super curious about, how do you see it? And they're going to want to be more connected with you. An active listener is very attractive.
Totally.
Problem solve with them. Try hard to avoid criticism. When you shift into that teenage world, you're often moving more into more problem solving, more let's make it work for both of us, for both parent and teens needs. And it seems to lessen the resistance and that pushback against authority. So that's where there's a little bit of a shift in that parenting style.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that like the getting curious rather than critical, like what it makes me think of is that like, nobody grows when they're shamed. We grow when we're encouraged. Shame really encourages just a kind of stagnancy. And so thinking about that with your teen, like that curiosity and encouragement is a huge way to help them get through it. And Anna just sent me a message saying that a parent's reflecting on the significance of having even just one safe person, even if it's not the parent.
Yes.
And that is such a good point. Just one person, coach, family, friend, neighbor, friends, parents. That's so important to have that safe person. Yeah, that's a good, thanks for sharing that. So.
The other part we've got is, the only other thing we've got to is about secure attachments. We want our teens to be securely attached to us. Yes. And so really that's about being safe, seen, and soothed. So, so teens are emotionally safe to share with you their thoughts and their feelings. They're not going to be worried about how you might react to them. Mm-hmm. To be seen, that's the ability for you to be a mirror to them when they're sharing something with you, and to be soothed. And so when they are distressed, you're able to be a calm support and comfort them. And those are, again, things that we talk about in the Connect group, if you feel so inspired to try that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure. And using humor. That's another good one.
Oh, absolutely. Use humor. You will get through this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You will definitely get through this.
So that is it. Basically, we're going to be uploading these videos of today and Tuesday on our NARSF website. And we're still just working out whether it's going to be a YouTube link or we're going to upload it right to the website. So you can find it there under the LIFT program under the Child and Family Services. And then, Anna's got our phone number. We've got our phone number down there with our extension. You can also just Google us, you'll find us. And we'd be really happy to do intakes. And we're also on the recording, we'll attach kind of a list of our resources that we used for this presentation, if anybody's curious.
Yeah, we'd also like to thank the school district for being willing to offer this with us and providing the promotion just to get more information out.
Yes, and actually the school district was all trained to do connect groups, which is the group we're mentioning about the kind of attachment parenting. So when we're also trained here too. So likely we'll be running one again in the fall. But check out the school district. You can ask at your kid's school if you're interested in doing that group. Does anybody have any questions? And if they do, please write to Anna. If not, Anna says she's got a few. Anna, do you want to come online?
Yeah, I do. So please keep the questions coming if you've got them. So from a little earlier in the presentation, parents asking about some alternatives for consequences. They were thinking specifically around taking away the phone. So they had kind of a two-part question in a way where, alternative consequences to taking the phone, but then also like what's a better consequence for things like swearing or slamming things or throwing stuff, breaking things. What do we do? How do we respond?
We should know this answer, Emma.
I keep being like my all I wanted to say was I need more context, which I'm really sorry about because I think the age of the teen, is this an ongoing thing? Is this a one-time thing? Do they have mental health stuff? Like, I guess I just have so many questions about that.
So just hearing back from that family, they're noting that one in particular, that this youth is 13.
Yeah.
And that they lash out in anger all the time.
Right.
And
So that's where I know you probably want a direct answer, but this is where you can actually be curious about it and taking a step back and noticing the interactions. Be curious about who says what, who does what, then what happens. As you're looking at the sequence of interactions, because we can't change anything until we get really clear around what's actually happening. Because part of the challenge is when there's anger and rage, it all blurs, and then we really can't tell who said what, then what happened. So, I mean, I think that's the first step, is taking a step back and noticing what triggered what.
That's a big thing, thinking what's the context, is it happening at certain times in the day, in the week, in the month? I'm curious about that too. And again, like Denise said, like you can't change anybody, even your children that you generally have a lot of probably authority over. What you can do is changing, like looking at your responses, how many boundaries, how you set boundaries and limits, like what you're allowing, how you're responding to their anger. Do you respond with anger or punishment? Like, so there's these different kind of ways of looking at it, but unfortunately, it's not an easy answer. It's something that I think every family is going to be a little bit different as to how they address it. And that's where I guess like connecting with either a counselor through us or somebody else to kind of like work that out, I would really suggest, because it is scary when your kid's freaking out and you think, oh my God, is this going to get worse? So kind of looking at maybe probably trying to find the root of what's why is that so charged? Yeah.
And I do hear experiences where the parent decides to take the phone away in the heat of the moment when everybody's up on anger mountain, this would not be a good time to take the phone away.
Yes.
Because both people are not doing well. This is not a good time to start having a wrestling match with the phone. These would be conversations you maybe have when things beforehand about maybe what you're going to be doing if this happens beforehand. So not having the discussion in the heat of the moment, but having a plan beforehand, then the team is a little probably going to be less reactive than if there's just the pulling of the phone and then the wrestling match.
Yeah. Establishing your limits already. Yeah.
And there are other alternatives than taking the phone away. And a lot of parents will say, that's the only thing I got. You know, yeah, logical consequences, letting life happen is powerful. What was the other question about? Oh, swearing and breaking.
Yeah, just other ways of responding. This family is just giving a little bit more feedback. Like they're keen to kind of connect to have a broader conversation. They don't want to take over the whole time.
Okay.
I want to know too that during this conversation, we've been getting lots of feedback from other parents with ideas and things that could work. And I appreciate all of your thoughtfulness in that way.
Oh, that's awesome.
And just wanting to acknowledge that I've seen all of your comments and you are absolutely thoughtfully considering different ways of approaching things. And it's parenting is such a hard job, and we're so I guess I just kind of hold the two thoughts really close together. We're so bad at playing comparesies, and it's so important for us to just hold those thoughts. You know, I see you, I hear you, and I'm doing the best that I can right now. And I'm learning, I'm growing, and I'm trying to find the solutions that will work the best for me and my family. And it's so hard. It's a big world out there, and especially nowadays, there's so much available on media, on video, blah blah blah, and all these rock stars who are polished and shiny, and it's just like.
No, and I think
we're getting by. So
what we can say is that like we see a huge cross section of families in LIFT, like a very wide variety. There are problems everywhere. There is no family that's going to be having a peachy keen time with their teens. They might not talk about it, you know, but just so you know, there is no perfect family at all. That's a myth. And so everybody's struggling in their own way. So just to know you're not alone in the struggle.
In a sidebar conversation with another family tonight, just even that thought of good enough parenting.
Yeah.
That's a whole
I love that.
Good enough parenting. It's good enough. And this idea of perfection, this idea of getting it right all the time is just not attainable. And
it's harmful almost because you feel crappy about it.
Yeah. Just constantly living in guilt and shame, as opposed to recognizing, you know what, I could have done better. And I know that I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah.
And just being generous with ourselves as parents and humans. Always, of course, you know, like safety is so important. Respect is so important. Those things are key. But again, just being gentle with ourselves and with each other is so vital.
Totally.
Another question was just around the video links. So actually, I'm going to go to the next slide here. This is these are our references. So some of the books that we've referenced, the video clips that we had. There's the YouTube links there, and then a couple of scholarly articles as well that we kind of mined for this information. And so, not the most formal citations, but our
you get the gist of it though.
Yes, we absolutely drew from some very reputable sources, and these are them. These are they. And then again, just a reminder that we will be posting all of this video and Tuesday's video on our website. It's not there yet. We'll get it up as soon as we can. But that's at NARSF. Sorry. And just one other kind of reflection, I guess. around parenting styles. And, you know, a parent just noting that it seems like we're just across the spectrum all the time.
Oh,
And,
God, yeah. Mhm.
and how significant that is to see ourselves and even to see our teens on that spectrum of kind of responding, of reacting in different ways. So yeah. Another question here related to, and this is actually related to a question we had from Tuesday that we weren't able to get to, just around consequences for drug use and alcohol, being in places where you shouldn't be doing these activities, in places where you shouldn't be doing them. That's a huge question.
I think it's like whether it's drugs, whether it's slamming things, like I think it's basically it's behavior that you're not comfortable with as a parent, right? And so it's like, it sounds like, and I'm not sure that exactly the question was, but just like, you know, how do you communicate that to your teen? How do you communicate your limits to your teen in a way that they can hear it? And again, I think just needing to know a little bit more probably about the context. For drugs, another great resource too, we have a program at NARSF called Transitions, and we do, I'm taking credit for it. They do a supported withdrawal for teens who maybe are using maybe more regularly, more heavily, but they also have day programs that are running groups and different things that are kind of around like a substance use adjacent. It's not always talking about that, but it's kind of support for kids who are maybe using some substances. So just as a side note.
I know too, I think it's a government website, but they have a couple of different resources for parents, and they specifically show you some like sample conversations that you can have around substances. So around pot, around harder drugs, around alcohol, around smoking, around vaping, some of these different things, and they model some of how the dialogue might work. Really good references. Do you guys remember the ones? I can't look them up because I've got my
it could be I think it could be a BC Health thing.
Yeah, and related to substances, but yeah, like there are some great resources out there.
Yeah, maybe Anna, you might be able to maybe put them onto the resources.
Yeah, I'll add them onto our resources.
Because that sounds like a great great idea.
We're almost at 8, so we should probably think about wrapping up, but really appreciate.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
Yeah, that's so lovely. Thank you for participating, and yeah, we appreciate your audience with us.
You've been such an engaging group. You've really sent a lot of questions. I know Denise and Emma haven't got all of them, but I certainly have had a lot of feedback from you, and so we really appreciate you coming and engaging with this. And our hope is that this is equipping and tooling you as parents and humans in the world. And we would love to just expand and continue the conversation if you're ever interested in service with our program. We are the people running it. So
and two other counselors, but yeah, we're three of them. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So we wish you all the best.
Absolutely.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
We appreciate it. Bye.
Good night.